There we go. I got some applause on this one. Yo, Steve, how are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, after the technical difficulties that we've been having, I'd say you deserve applause.
Thank you. You know, it's always the external microphone going through like a preamp or a mixer or something causes it every time. But I have to eliminate all the possibilities on my end before I ask that question. Let me bring you up a little bit in the mix. I'm going to do that. Audio mixer. Talk to me, Steve.
Hello, testing 1, 2, 3. Hello, Michael.
Keep
Hello,
talking.
taxi rally people. Welcome to our taxi sequel.
All right, good enough. I think that's about all the level we're gonna get, and it's just gonna have to do. Okay, we are good to go.
It's a good thing nobody's watching. I would hate anybody to be seeing any of this.
No, it's fine. Um, they're used to it. Trust me, they know me. All right, so I'm going to do something that's actually, can you pull your phone a little closer to you? I could use you a little bigger in the frame and it will get the audio up.
All right, let's see how this works
I feel like we're on a ship bobbing in the ocean.
here. Okay, maybe I'll come up here. How's that? A little better?
Yeah, and just
Better?
make sure that you're projecting. Well, you're a little too close now, but just project a lot when you talk.
Okay.
Sorry, I know that's not in your normal cadre of things that you do, but anyway. So let me give a quick intro and then tell them what we're going to do today. Steve Barden is a production music composer for film and television. His music can be heard on TV somewhere in the world on a daily basis. His music is aired on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, ABC Family, A&E, American Heroes Channel, Animal Planet, Biography, Bravo, Comedy Central, The Cooking Channel, Discovery, E, Food Network, Game Show Network, HGTV, Hulu, Investigation, Discovery, Lifetime MTV, on and on and on and on. There's like 10 more. You get it. He's all over the damn place. Steve's also an author. His first book, this one right here, which I recommend every single person. I'm not doing this because he's on the show with me or he's become a friend of mine over many years. I'm doing it because if you don't have this book and you want to be in the production music industry, you got to have this book. It'll be the best $29 you've ever spent. Seriously, you will love it. Yes, Marion Laird says, I absolutely love that book. Capital Love. Anyway, Steve's a multi-instrumentalist playing guitar, piano, violin, and many other stringed instruments. He's studied guitar at the Guitar Institute of Technology in Hollywood, which is currently called Musicians Institute, and studied film scoring at UCLA. He's scored animated TV series Tic Tac Tunes, Journey to the Heart of the World, and Button Nose. Love Button Nose. Where'd they go? He also scored the award-winning animated short The Baseball Card Shop, originally produced by Nickelodeon. He's also written jingles and a theme song for Los Angeles radio personalities Mark and Brian, and also Kevin and Bean. Yay, Mr. Steve Barden. Fantastic. Anyway, I literally said, Steve, I want you on the rally, and you know what? Let's just pick a chapter of your book and talk about stuff. So I picked chapter 16, which talks about various delivery things, which we touched on. We did quite a bit of it, actually, at the Road Rally, but I'm glad we're doing it here as well, and have a different person doing it. So if you saw it at the rally, you're getting a whole different perspective. So Steve sent me a folder with a couple of tracks that he broke out and gave me, he gave me stems. So do you want to start with the duck season thing or share the blame?
Let's start with Share the Blame. It's a dramedy track.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to preface it with?
Give me 1 second. I got to pull up my notes. So this is one of the tracks that I have provided. If you buy the book, you get access to several audio examples, and this is one of them. And this is one that's not currently signed to a library. I own the rights to it, so we are going to present this. So it is a dramedy track. A lot of pizzicato strings. Well, it's been a long time since I've heard this piece. So I know it's got a celeste. I'm not sure what other instruments that are in it. So let's, if we just play through the full version, and then we can talk about what we're going to do with breaking out stems and alt mixes.
Awesome. Okay, here comes the full version. Let's see how my levels are. I'm good. Here we go.
That's not the right track.
Whoops, sorry.
So it's it's a number 15.
Share the blame, number 15, got it.
Yeah. So that was a preview of what we're going to talk about next.
All right. Okay, tell us what you want to tell us.
Okay, so first of all, we're talking about deliverables, what you're going to give a client when they sign your track. That, of course, is the full arrangement. It has all of the instruments, but you're generally going to provide additional tracks that might fall under the category of stems and alternate mixes. Now, the difference between stems and alternate mixes: stems technically represent the individual instruments or groups of instruments. So a stem could be just the first violins, and another stem could be the second violins, another stem could be the French horns, and another stem could be the trumpets, et cetera, et cetera. Depending on what the client wants, the stems could be grouped by types of instruments. For example, all the strings could be one stem. All the brass could be another stem. It depends on what their needs are. Most of the libraries that I've ever written for usually ask for alternate mixes. They prefer not to do anything with stems on their own. So what they're going to ask for is something as, for example, a bed version, which has no melody, which we'll listen to probably on the next on the next track. But some of the other types of alternate mixes that you would provide a client would be one with no drums or percussion. There might be a version that has drums and percussion only. There might be a version that has drums and bass. It goes on and on. The possibilities are unlimited. The general rule is provide 3 or 4 alternate mixes, unless the client has specific types of mixes that they want you to give them. Just give them something that's interesting and something that's usable. So for example, let's go ahead and play track 16, and this is the same piece of music, but without the melody. And the melody in this case is primarily a bassoon and clarinet. All right, so probably what you heard was a lot of repetition in that pattern of the pizzicato strings and the celeste. This type of cue, this bed type of cue, would work excellent behind dialogue because there's really nothing to interfere. It's just laying down a wallpaper background. Anytime you have melody, you risk interfering with dialogue, depending on whether it's a male or female person speaking and the range of the instrument. So that's why it's really important to provide, if nothing else other than the full version, a no melody version. Okay. The third version, and this one I kept simple. I only had 3 versions plus the stinger. So this third version is just the pizzicato strings and the celeste. So there was no percussion, which in this track was bongos, which I love bongos. And we had some additional percussion like castanets, just to add a little flavor. So let's go ahead and play track 17. This is pizzicato and celeste. Okay, so what we really lacked out of this track that we had in the previous version was the fast percussion, the rapid pace of the bongos. That kept the pace up. So this really brings it back and keeps it a very modest background. So this shouldn't interfere with anything. And then finally, let's talk about the stinger. The stinger is the track that is going to end the piece. So we take this from the full version. This way an editor can place that ending because the pieces need to end some way. They usually don't do crossfades. That's not very common. So they can take this stinger and place it, and then they can edit the front part of the track and move it around and make it fit any length that they want. So, Michael, if you would play track 18, the stinger.
Yes, I also want to mention how a stinger might be used in an actual scene. So let's say this music is being played in a scene where Kim Kardashian is looking for her car keys. And she's looking all over the house, and it's playing. It's a little mysterious, a little cutesy, a little quirky. And then all of a sudden she opens the door to the bedroom, and she opens the door and she sees that the dog is on the floor holding her car keys in her mouth. And you would hear bump, bump, the stinger, because it's the end of the storyline, and the editor's gonna cut right after that. Here's the surprise. So imagine something like that. Clearly, I'm not a TV editor or a writer, but when you hear the stinger, imagine it being used in that sort of scenario. Bad dog.
Exactly. Perfect. So I would say if the client does not ask you for a specific number of alternate mixes, or specifically what kind of mixes that they want, I would provide at minimum 3 mixes: the full mix, the bed mix, which is no melody, and then the stinger, and then anything else that would be interesting.
And let's talk about not going back and doing that a week later. Why is it a smart thing to do it right when you bounce the full mix to do these other ones?
You want consistency between your mixes. You might have moved things around. You might have forgotten how you set up plugins for the various mixes. It just makes it a lot easier if you do everything. If you set up your DAW in a way with templates that it makes it very simple to do these alternate mixes, then you can get them done at one time. There's just consistency in everything that you do.
And I'm a huge advocate, I'm pretty sure you'll back me up on this, of not adjusting the levels of the individual tracks. Leave them right where they were in the original mix. Even if your mix bus meters are looking a little flaccid, don't change any faders. Just don't move anything, because the editors are going to possibly want to cut in and out of these sections. They may cut, maybe they'll use the first 4 bars of the full mix and then cut to 16 bars of the mix minus melody instrument, then go back to the full mix. So if you've adjusted any levels individually or as the master fader, at the master fader, then when they cut, it's going to be dropping in, out, higher, lower. So leave everything where it is.
Critical tip. Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
One of the other breakdowns that they might ask for, and these are typically for commercials, are 15, 30, and 60-second versions of your tracks. I do recommend the easiest way to do these is to, especially if you're working with MIDI. If you're working with live instruments, it makes it a little bit more complicated. But just create alternate versions of that project and cut out measures so you can just adjust the piece, and you might have to adjust the tempo slightly. But I find that if you're cutting the master audio file and trying to stretch audio and shrink audio to make it fit, it's a pain in the butt, and it never sounds good. You're trying to cut between a 4-bar phrase, and you end up with 2.5 bars because you need those 6 beats out of there.
Been there, done that. Not that I'm a composer, but I've edited stuff like that and gone, well, anybody who has any sense of musicality will know that was the worst edit in the world.
Yeah, and I always advocate, try to make their life, the editor's life, easier. Don't make it harder for them. Be on their side. Just do whatever you can to make life easier for them.
That's a great point, because they could remember your name, and if you make life easy, they're going to reflexively, when they see you pop up on another list when they're looking for another piece of music, if they know that you've got your act together, they're very likely to go, okay, let's start with that one because Steve Barden did it, and that guy, has all of his ducks in a row.
Right. So you're just giving them Legos, and they can just snap the pieces together easily. So.
I see a couple people asking questions. Let's save it. It's 1:44 now. We've got till 2:15. This next stuff we're going to play and talk about probably take another 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll do some questions, okay? So hang on to them, and when it's time, just write question, the word question in all caps so I can see it easily. All right, you want to move on to the ducks?
Yes, let's move on to the ducks. This is called Duck Season, Rabbit Season. This is a kind of a swampy bluegrass track. So let's start with the first track, which is the full mix.
Okay, here we go. I want to publicly thank Steve because I called him up and said, I want a cue that sounds like XYZ. And he sent me a couple that he had that hadn't been picked up. I said, you can't sign these with the publisher later. We had just had an issue where the entirety of day number 2 from last year's Road Rally got blocked because somebody had a song that got played during the listening panel, and it must have had an illegal sample, and all of a sudden the entire day, because it was one continuous stream, is now blocked. So I said, asked Steve, I said, can I commission you? He said, well, I've got a couple that are in that ballpark. He sent them over, and they weren't really what I was looking for. So he actually recorded a brand new thing from scratch just for this, that he will never give to a publisher so that this doesn't get blocked, blah, blah, blah. Thank you, Steve. That was really menschy of you to do that. And people are commenting about how good it sounds. It does. It's a perfect example of this style. So all that said, commentary on that, please, Steve.
Oh, appreciate it. So yeah, you asked for like something with a lot of tracks. So I actually created a lot of tracks. There were 2 Dobros, an acoustic guitar, 2 electric guitars, a mandolin, 2 banjos, a bass, and drums.
Wow.
It was exhausting. Oh, and a fiddle.
You weren't fiddling around.
So the A section, which is the initial dobro playing the riff, there was an edit point. There was a pause before it brought in the next A section where all the other instruments come in. Originally, it was 1 bar shorter, and I just felt like it needed a lot of space in there to breathe. So that's why, if you thought, well, why is it just sitting there for so long? I don't know. That's the way it felt. I brought in the riff again before the final section with the dobro with sort of that mid-rangey telephone kind of sound. I don't know. It was just kind of an artsy thing I did on It just sounded kind of interesting.
Yeah,
And then we bring everything back up, the shout chorus, as it were.
yeah. I noticed the telephonic EQ on that, and I thought, that was kind of a cool move because you want it to stay thematically the same, but you want to add enough interest that it's a little interesting and seems to have a purpose in life and it's moving forward towards a goalpost, if you will. And by doing that, you did exactly that. Do you want me to play track 2 yet?
Yes. So, first of all, let me just talk about the instruments in case anybody's asking. So the dobro playing the riff is actually from a contact instrument that I created. I sampled a 1937 dobro and built an instrument out of it. I tried to play the part myself, and I couldn't get it to sound as good as I made the sample. So that was a virtual instrument.
Interesting.
There was another dobro playing slide fills, and that was played live. All of the other guitars are live. The mandolin and banjos, those were MIDI instruments, but they sounded really good, so I was really happy with them. The same with the upright bass and the drums.
Awesome. I love the fact that you created a contact instrument.
It was fun, and it's a free instrument. If anybody wants to download it, there's a website called Piano Book. Just search for 1937 dobro.
Nice. That was very generous of you. All right. Now we're playing track 2, guitar, bass.
So this is a long track. I don't know if I gave you several versions. So we could just break down like starting the B section and kind of so we can hear what the difference is in the arrangement, because each version starts with that same dobro riff. So the first 30 seconds are identical for all these. So if it's easy for you to jump 30 seconds into the next cue.
Sadly, I'm using Apple Music to play it.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I hate Apple Music. I despise it. I despise the Gmail interface as well. What can I say? I'm old school. So no, I can't really jump around. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, tell you what, then we can just play the first minute of each next alt version.
Okay. That I can.
Okay, so the next alt version is acoustic guitars and bass. So in other words, no drums, no banjos, no mandolin, no fiddle. So basically dobro and acoustic guitar and bass. Not that one.
Why is it not doing? Weird.
So there should be pause. We get into it. Cool. So the difference is like without the drums, just like one instrument gives it more of a bed kind of a feel. Now you're going to have that riff going all the way through it. So there really is no melody, but that dobro riff, kind of represents the melody, but you can't really remove that. That's sort of the embodiment of this track. So the next version is all the acoustic strings. So I believe I get this correct, I think this includes the mandolin and the banjo. But again, this one does have the bass and drums. So what it doesn't have is the fiddle, of course, and I think no electric guitars. Okay, so
Okay.
track 3.
Here we go.
Okay, so clearly with that banjo, it created a lot of movement that we didn't have in the previous version. So I mean, that has an entirely different feel for how you would use it in a scene, even though it's so similar to the other version. The next version is essentially the same thing, except we just took away the drums. So even though when the banjo comes in and it feels a little faster, we lose a little bit of the momentum because of that we're missing the drums. So go ahead and track 4.
Okay, here it comes. Wow.
So yeah, just it's such a slight variation, and it can change the whole emotion of a scene.
Instantly.
Something simple. Yeah. And this might be a case where you provide each of those 12 or so instruments that I created as stems and let them kind of mix and match their own versions. Okay. So I have one more full version, which is just the Dobro. So it's the riff and then the slide fills. So
Okay.
track 5. And the whole idea behind this whole track is to kind of keep it sparse, a lot of space, so there is room for dialogue. You don't want to be walking on dialogue, so that increases your chances of placement if you can do that.
That's the Steve Barden version of the hit "Walking in Memphis." It's called "Walking on Dialogue."
Exactly.
So It's worth mentioning that we can't assume that everybody watching us is already familiar with production music or doing instrumental cues. Just so you know, it's extremely rare, like less than 1% of the time, that the entire cue would be used. Chances are they could start at the beginning and use the first 21 seconds. They could start, 42 seconds in where we go into that different section and just use that. And that's part of the methodology of composers that write production music cues, is writing stuff that they know could work full length if needed. It has an arc. It keeps you heading towards a destination. It supports a central thematic the central thematic musical theme or motif supports a mood or an emotion. Maybe even it supports action in a scene, depending on the kind of cue it is. But they could take anything. They could take the very laconic stuff from the beginning and use that for, somebody's heading out on a boat at sunrise. They could take the middle part that's just got a little more life to it and maybe have somebody with an ATV that needs a little more life because they're literally moving faster. And now that brings us to the stinger, which I'll let Steve address that.
Right. So the track ends. It doesn't fade out. So I chose like the last. I think it's the last 2 bars. But I actually copied the bars in my project and moved them, to the end of the track, so I could have a clean start on all the parts. Because sometimes if you're trying to cut like the master audio file, you get some zip, sound in the audio as you're leading into it. So you try to leave a little breathing space before the track starts, so it's clean. So, stinger, please.
Okay. I'd like to talk about a way a stinger might be used for people who don't know. So in this case, let's say that they use the body of that cue. The guys are going out duck hunting and they're waking up in the morning, they're going outside, their coffee's steaming, and they're watching the sun come up, and you hear the laconic stuff. Actually, let me play a little of the top of the cue. So they've just walked outside, they're having their coffee, the sun's coming up. Other guys coming out the door, appreciating the sunrise. More instrumentation, now they're gathering around, they're getting ready to mount up on their ATVs and ride out of town to go kill some innocent ducks. Damn ducks. And here we go. Not quite. Now we've got a little more action in the music, and they're rolling down the road on their ATVs. I mean, the music literally makes you see the scene, which is a good thing. So now, let's imagine at some point
they're loading their guns.
There you go. At some point, they've gotten to their destination, and they're getting out, and they're getting in the duck blind, and the music fades out, and they're going to start having a conversation. And bang, 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 they've shot at some ducks, and now we're getting ready to go to commercial, and they want to wrap up the scene and go out to the commercial, and they're going to use this. So that's just a little period or exclamation point on the scene, and the music helps say, okay, here we are at the end of this scene. Or as Laurel Ostrander would say, at the end of a beat, which is basically a topical theme within a scene. So, man, what a great example. Thank you for doing such a good job of putting that together.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it, damn it. We've got 11 minutes left. You want to do a little Q&A? Or do you have more stuff that you want to address before we go into the Q&A?
Not really. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about metadata because that's also covered in the chapter, but that's another lengthy discussion. So we can just talk about the music aspect of it.
All right. So yeah, if you have a question, please type in the word question and in all caps so I can see it easily. Also, I saw somebody, I think it was Ken Messford, like a half an hour ago, said, how'd you record the Dobro, with a mic or with plugged in, or a combination of both?
So any acoustic instrument is mic only. I did not use any kind of direct injection. It's funny because when I recorded the samples for the Dobro instrument, the VST, I actually recorded those samples 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I cannot remember what microphone I used for it. I did not have, I use primarily this gauge mic now for almost all my guitar stuff. So I don't remember what I had at that time. But I had intended to create an instrument for Giga Studio, if you guys remember that.
Mm-hmm.
I just never completed it. But I still had the samples, and I thought, this would be a good time. And I went and cleaned up all the sounds and stuff, and voila, instrument.
Chuck Maiden wants to know what moods or genres seem to do better for you.
Well, I had a huge career with Dramedy tracks. So that other track that we played today was from that period when I was doing like 200 shows of The Little Couple. I just had a lot of success with that style. And it was fun, but you know what? I get kind of burned out and, doing other stuff. I do primarily orchestral work, even though I'm a guitarist, and I should be doing more guitar stuff, but I just enjoy orchestra so much. But my focus for the last year has been in trailer music.
Richard Graham wants to know, is it worth bouncing and saving each track too for future edits?
Yes, especially for the sake of doing backups, because you don't know if you might come back to a track. I've had calls to come back for a track that I did 10 years ago. And
wow.
If the version of the virtual instrument that you're using no longer exists or doesn't work because maybe it was a VST2 instrument and your DAW now only supports VST3, it may not work. So if you want to save the audio files if you can. It does take up more disk space, but it's very helpful.
Nowadays, external drives, even SSD external drives, have gotten to be so inexpensive, and the latency has gotten so minimal that it's time to quit thinking about conserving disk space. If you don't have $100 for like a 3
terabyte drive,
right? Exactly, $100 for a 3 terabyte the solid state drive. Man, oh man, it's unbelievable. We just got some really neat little USB drives for the Road Rally to back some stuff up. They're tiny. I don't have one laying around on my desk, but they're. I have one kind of like it. They're smaller than these, only like 2/3 the size of this, and it's got a little slider on the top, and out comes a USB-C on one end. You slide it the other way, and a regular USB, a USB-B, I believe. So, because we're all in that mode now where we've got dongles and stuff all over, where we've got USB-C here and USB-B there. This one little drive solves that problem, and they were like $19 for 128 gigs. Yeah, there was a time you would take out a second on your house to buy that thing.
There's no excuse for not backing up your tracks.
Absolutely. When recording instruments via mic only, Peter Rahal wants to know, do you have a preference of small diaphragm to large diaphragm for EQ's sake?
For any kind of acoustic guitar Dobros, I always use a large diaphragm.
Yeah.
And my mic of choice has been this gauge mic for several years now.
Right, which is a knockoff of the 87, and Shirelli actually dictated how the electronics were tuned on that mic and which capsule they used. And I got to say, he got that thing so right. That so many people I know bought that microphone for like $100 and use it.
$100, yeah.
Yeah, use it more than any other microphone. I've got to say, I've been manufacturers have been sending me stuff because it was Road Rally season, and I love my AT2020 that I've been using on the show for years, but AKG sent me this Lyra microphone, which is also a USB mic, and I plugged it in. I had another issue with it that I've got to solve, but didn't have time before the rally. But just to plug it in and listen to it, the AT I've loved for 10 years probably, and everybody loves it. This sounds better, and this is like, I don't know, I want to say $100, $150. So there's another one, the AKG Lyra. Any of the large capsule mics that are out there now, they all sound way better than microphones did 10 years ago, and they're all pretty darn good. Some are amazing. Another question. Pete Mason wants to know, has a show used the same track but multiple versions in the same show or the same season?
Mm-hmm. It happens all the time. That's why you want to provide as many useful versions of a track to give them choices.
Okay, let's see if I can find another one. Here's one from Richard Graham. Roughly what percentage of the tracks you write end up being placed?
Well, assuming that means the ones that I've signed with libraries.
Mm-hmm. I think.
I might say close to 80%, but sometimes a track only gets used once. And then I have other tracks that get used tons. I mean, there's no way to predict what's going to get used and what isn't. But yeah, I do have tracks in libraries that have never been placed.
Yeah, which is standard for everybody. I think, the, what's the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle? 80% of your income will be generated by 20% of your tracks. You may also find that you have a track that doesn't get used for 6 years after you sign it, and you go, man, that library sucks. No, they don't suck. They just have a client, or they don't have any clients that need that thing now or tomorrow or 5.5 years from now. And then in year number 6, an editor on a particular show uses that track and goes, that worked perfectly. I'm going to remember that track and go back and use it whenever I need something like that. And now you get 7 uses inside of a 30-day period because some editor found it and found it to be very useful. And that's what it's all about, utility, usefulness. And then might even take it a step further and go, wow, this guy Barden understands production music. He's making my job easy. And then he's going to go in and search Steve Barden and look at all the different genres he covers. And now he's got a little mental note and some proclivity to use Steve Barden's stuff on future stuff. So these are the realities of how it works.
When I was doing the Little Couple, I was getting so many placements. I once had 10 unique placements in one episode.
Wow, that's not a little. Sorry, I couldn't. Yeah, bada boom. I'm trying to keep the show lively here. It's entertainment we're doing. Here's a question from Liz Rachel Walker. How often do libraries want stems and alt mixes for songs with vocals rather than instrumentals?
I can't answer that question. I don't do anything with vocals. But I would imagine the same rules would apply. You want to kind of give different versions to provide different kinds of feelings.
Yeah, at the very least, they're going to ask for a mix, full mix, and a mix minus vocal. That's extremely common because here's a good example of how that would get used. Interior of a bar scene, there's jukebox playing in the background, 2 people talking at the bar, and maybe you hear the first line of the vocal of the song, and then the dialogue starts. And that's when they cut to the instrumental-only version. Then their conversation ends, and they wrap it up with the hook being repeated, and then on to the next song maybe. So it's all about cutting in and out. Okay, I think we've got time for about one more question. Lisa Quam says, good questions. I agree with you, Lisa. Ray Hill, I missed you at the road rally, dude. I'm glad you're here for this, but I was hoping to see you at the Quarantini thing. Marion Laird says, and the questions dry up. Here's one from Richard Graham. How many pieces do pros tend to produce in a day or a week? This is a guy who the light has gone on for. He's like, wow, I could do this production music thing. How much do I have to do? How much money can I make? This good guy. So how many pieces? And remember, Steve has a full-time job. He is by trade an iOS developer and does apps and stuff. So, and he worked for many years for Disney doing that stuff. So it's not like he can do this 8 hours a day. So he does it at night, in the morning, at night, on weekends. How many pieces do pros tend to produce in a week?
Well, I think the answer is as many as possible. I mean, if you have adult responsibilities like working a full-time job and you have a family and you got to do those things. I think, really lucky due to the pandemic where everybody started working from home. That all of a sudden eliminated 3 hours of commuting for me. So I had those extra 3 hours to write every single day. So my productivity just skyrocketed.
Yeah, I think a lot of people found that to be the case. Well, kids, I'm sad to say this, but believe it or not, I'm double checking my timesheet, but I think we've reached the end of the show. We have. Steve, thank you again for doing this, number one. Thank you for doing the panel the other day at the in-person rally, which I got to say, honestly, I'm going to be completely candid with you guys. I went into this year's rally. Every year I have a goal of making the current rally somewhere between 10, 15, 20% better than the one before. And this year, although I felt like we had it nailed down, something just felt like it was missing to me because we hadn't done one in 3 years. We were a little out of practice. We had to reorient ourselves. When Bria and I did the virtual rallies, it was like a complete 180 of how we did things. We couldn't take any of our notes or processes from the live rally and really use them for the virtual rally. And the same was true going back to the live rally. So I went into this one not even trepidatious, just like it felt like something was missing. And then once we got there, the night of registration, people kept coming up to me going, I'm having so much fun. And I realized the missing link was that I hadn't seen the people yet. And I kept saying to people, how can you be having a great time? You've done nothing but stand in a line for 4 hours. The people I met, they're awesome. I love it. I'm amongst my people. That was what I wasn't feeling until we got there. And I was so happy. In the end, yeah, we got more rave reviews about this year's rally than I believe we had about any other one.
That's great.
Yeah, so I was very, very happy. It was great to see everybody. We did a little thing for the Quarantini happy hour people that were the extreme regulars that were there virtually every day that we did one. And it was really nice to have all them meet each other face to face. I don't know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of little magical moments in this year's rally. And anyway, so I am so glad that you were able to do that and do this. Thank you very, very much for investing the time and making this queue and coming down to the hotel and everything. And I will see you on the flip side, my friend.
Thank you so much. It was good to do it. I had fun. Good to see people at the rally again in person.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Steve Barden.